Hey, how's it amazing people? Welcome to Data in AI with Clarence. Last week I couldn't release a video because I was at a hackathon, very interesting hackathon. Might be doing a video on that sometime later. But in today's video, we're going to be covering what is a data engineer. So we're going to look at what a data engineer is and what is data engineering. We're also going to cover like what some of the things that a data engineer actually does in their day in life basically. And we're going to look at the skills and tools that you need as a data engineer, and we're going to end off the video by looking at the certifications that you need to cover in order for you to become a data engineer or to even upskill yourself as an engineer. So let's get into it. Okay, so what is data engineering? So data engineering is the practice of designing and building systems that are used for the collection, storing, and analysis of data at scale, right? And then the data engineer is then the professional who creates the infrastructure and the processes that organizations need in order for them to collect, manage, and analyze data efficiently. So what this simply means is that no matter how good your data scientist is or how good your data analyst is, if the data engineer doesn't do a very good job in ensuring that that whole process is done efficiently, you might get insights that might not be valuable to your organizations. And I think that's very important that the data engineer gets everything right, because whatever insights that you try to derive is dependent on the quality of your data. And the data engineer is a very, very important responsibility in ensuring that whatever data that you as an organization is basically collecting, and whatever data that the data analyst or the data scientist is going to use for the analysis is at its highest quality as possible. Now, from the definition, it is very clear that the key important responsibilities of a data engineer is to create the infrastructure and the processes that is required for the collection, management, and analysis of data. And this table breaks the separate processes or activities that a data engineer would need to do in each of the different phases, whether it's from collection, management, and analysis. On the first phase, which is the collection part, the data engineer would ensure that the infrastructure available ensures that the organization is able to implement data pipelines, data streaming platforms such as Kafka are configured in the right way, and networking and security infrastructure required to ensure that that infrastructure works. And in the processes, the data engineer ensures that the process for data ingestion and data integration are in place to ensure that the data is ingested and integrated properly into the different databases and systems that would actually need the data. Now, when you get to the management and storage of it, this is where you see databases, data warehouses, data lakes, cloud storage solutions, basically from cloud platforms like Azure AWS, SQL and NoSQL databases, data orchestration tools like the Airflow, machine learning infrastructure. So the data engineer makes sure that such infrastructure is available for the management of the data and storage of the data. And in terms of the processes that need to be in place here, the data engineer would ensure that the extraction, transformation, and loading of the data has already been established. So those processes are already there, and they have some sort of automation in place to just ensure that as data comes, all of that transformation is done automatically. And data cleansing, also data quality management, which is very important for the later usage of the data aggregation, so pulling data from all those different sources and sort of using all those different processes to put it into one place. Data monitoring and logging, very important to understand what is happening with your data. Did someone delete your data? Where is your data sitting? Those are very important things. And data backups and recovery, that's also very, very, very important for the entity to ensure that if something happens, they can still recover and back up their data basically. Now, the last part, which is the analysis of the data. Now, the responsibility of the data engineer at this phase is to basically ensure that systems such as Hadoop are there for the analysis of big data. So when the data scientists and data analysts come into play, they already have the infrastructure in place to ensure that they can get as much insight as they can and can get whatever data that they need. So you'd find that Also, machine learning infrastructure is already configured with the entire pipeline of the data collection management up until the analysis part of it. And the processes that the data engineer ensures that are in place are data transformation. I think data transformation is going to be very key for the data scientists and data analysts because they would want the data to be in certain formats. And real-time data processing is very important. Let's say there's a dashboard sitting somewhere and the dashboard is accessing real-time changes onto the data. And so I think real-time data processing is going to be very important. So those are some of the things that basically the data engineer will be doing. And this table gives you that detailed view of like in each of the different phases, whether it's collection, management, what infrastructure should a data engineer consider, and what sort of like processes should a data engineer also consider. Okay, now let's talk about the skills and tools that you'd need as a data engineer. Well, I think it's the first skill that's very important is programming. As a data engineer, you need to have a good solid foundation in programming, and the programming languages that you'd mostly use, it'll be Python, Java when you're going to work with big data, and you're most definitely going to need SQL for querying databases, basically. And you also need a good foundation in like the data engineering concepts, or concepts on like databases, data warehousing, big data. Those are very important concepts for you to understand as a data engineer, because you will be working with so many of those tools, and the infrastructure itself is your responsibility. And having that understanding of a data warehouse, databases, and like big data concepts is very important for you as a data engineer. And data quality and data governance skills very important. So being able to understand certain compliance requirements as a data engineer is very important, because you are building the infrastructure for the data, and if your organization is not complying to whether GDPR or whatever regulation that is affecting the country where you're working at, that could be an issue for your organization. So understanding compliance related issues and data quality related issues is very important for you as a data engineer. And I think also understanding the cloud platforms, right? As a data engineer, you'd find that most organizations are moving to the cloud, right? Like most organizations are using platforms like Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud. And it's very important for you to be skilled in at least one of those areas, because um, if you don't understand how to configure those platforms, that can be an issue for you as a data engineer, because then you are not able to manage that environment. And that is a very critical role for you as a data engineer, because everyone is expecting you to configure the infrastructure in such a way that it is efficient for the data collection management and data processing itself. And when it comes to the tools, there's just a lot of tools out there. So I just put together this picture to like just show you like what are some of the tools you might be interacting with, but definitely working with a lot of databases such as Kafka, Cosmos DB. There's just so many databases out there, and like streaming tools that you'd actually use. So it will also depend on like what sort of directions you're planning on taking, whether you're looking at the AWS route or the Azure route or the Google route. All of those have certain tools that you might actually require for you to perform your task. So I would say it's definitely dependent on whatever field that, or whatever sort of like space you'll be getting into, and the organization that you're looking towards to. But this picture sort of gives you a high level of like what is out there and what you might possibly be working with, basically. Now let's look at the certifications that you can do to upskill yourself as a data engineer. And as I've mentioned, there's just so many tools out there, and I think it's very dependent on like the organization that you most likely work with, in terms of the tools that you'll be utilizing. But I think a very foundational sort of like important certification that I think you need to actually have if you're going to get into the space is the cloud platform certifications, right? Because so much of the data is now stored on the cloud. You find that most organizations are using this cloud platforms to store their data, and you getting certified with data engineering specific certifications along those cloud platforms is very important, as you're more likely going to be using tools that are already in those platforms. So the first one would be on the Microsoft Azure Certified Data Engineer. So this one actually introduces you to like the tools that are available in Azure, and how you can manage and build infrastructure that is required for data connection, data storing, and data management itself. And if you want an AWS version for it, there's also the AWS Certified Data Engineer Associate. So that's another certificate that you actually do in order for you to familiarize yourself with like the tools that are available on the AWS environment. And you've also got the Google Professional Data Engineer Associate. So that's another certification that you could actually do in order for you to familiarize yourself with like what's available in Google, what do they use to store data, what tools do they use to stream data, what tools do they use for analysis of data. So I think doing certifications along those three major cloud providers is very important, as most likely the organization that you end up working for would be using those platforms. And if you're using those platforms, it is much more beneficial for you as an organization to also just use the tools that come on those platforms, because you're already paying for the licenses and the utilization of the resources within that environment. We have come to the end of our video, and I hope by now you understand what is data engineering, what is a data engineer, what skills and tools do you actually need as a data engineer, and what exactly do they do, and what certification can you look at in order for you to get started in upskilling yourself as a data engineer or getting into the data engineering field. And if you love this video, please like and subscribe so that more people can actually see this video and that you can get more content from this video. Thank you.